Hey guys, here at OSReviews.com. Today we're going to go really retro, very old, and take a look at the Palm IIIC. This is original 3C. This is actually the first Palm PDA device to ever offer a color LCD display. In fact, it's one of the earliest devices on the market to have full color. In addition, it has a full color touchscreen, so it's kind of nice as well. But you can really see how technology has evolved since then, because this is a super bulky device. We're going to give you this retro review here at OSReviews.com. In terms of hardware, you'll see that it has a distinctive taste from that era of the early 2000s and late 1990s. And you'll find that it's similar to Apple's Newton series and its Cradle series in many ways. It has large plastic design. There's no metals on here at all, but it's industrial and it's robust, and it has this interesting curved shape to it that rotates down on the keys. Now you can see that the display is fairly large. It's a resistive touchscreen, as you might expect from this era, which allows you to use handwriting recognition in the graffiti area, so you don't have to use and peck out a tiny QWERTY keyboard. The color screen actually is, it's not that high quality resolution, but the thing that really strikes me, and you'll see this in a second, is how bad the backlight is. And when you turn on the device is almost unreadable under direct sunlight, and you have to be in complete darkness just to see the screen, even with the backlight turned all the way on. It's very disappointing. I kind of rather have a monochrome screen at this time, if I'm going to be honest. But let's take a look at the buttons. Below the screen itself, we have an on-off key that's green. Pressing that will turn on the screen, and right now our screen is turned on, as you can see. That is pretty much as bright as it gets, and under glare and stuff, it's entirely unreadable. Additionally, we have a few tactile buttons that correspond to the calendar, to the phone key. We have the access to the tasks key and to the memos key. You also have a 2 up and down key that will take you through navigation in longer lists and menu systems. On the screen itself, we have access to a home key, a drag-down menu key. Pressing this tiny key on the bottom here that says ABC will bring out a physical QWERTY keyboard that's on the screen, and writing on this arrow will be used for your handwriting recognition input. There's also a calculator, and also a search button. There are no buttons on the side of this device at all. It's very large, and on the top of the button, you'll find access to the stylus slot. The stylus is very large. It actually is made entirely out of metal. As a result, it feels pretty good in the hand, but again, this shows how large this device is because they can fit such a huge stylus in here. On the back, you'll see that this device was assembled in the USA. It's continually made out of the plastic. There's a infrared port on the top for beaming technology and for the basic wireless that it offers. And on the bottom, you'll see your serial connection dock, which also charges the device. Because surprisingly, this isn't just the first colored PDA from Palm. It's also one of the first rechargeable lithium-iron PDAs on the market that doesn't use disposable batteries anymore. So that's kind of pretty exciting as well during the time, of course. So let's turn on the device and see the screen and the UI. Actually, surprisingly, not a lot has changed, taking a look at even newer Palm PDAs these days, but you'll see that the screen remains basically unreadable. If we zoom in, you'll see how faint the things are, and it's not just the angle problem. In fact, in the human eye, I can actually see this even less. I'm surprised the camera can even see the font on here, but the glare is incredible. In darker conditions where all the lights turn off, you can see that the screen gets marginally better, but still the colors are entirely washed out and hard to read. And in direct sunlight, it becomes impossible to read. Pressing down the actual power on key for a longer period of time actually brings up an adjust brightness setting, and turning on the brightness to full maximum is slightly better, but it drains battery really fast because this is, again, a pioneer of this technology, and still under direct sunlight and glare problems, it becomes very hard to read. But thankfully, under darker conditions now, it gets a little bit easier to read. With the brightness turned all the way down, you conserve electricity, but you can only read it in the darkest environments. Let's just say done and see what happens. Now you'll see that Palm OS has actually surprisingly not evolved a lot in terms of this type of PDA software. You have basically the same features that we've come to expect. There's no memory expansion slot available on this device. There is an external a keyboard, QWERTY keyboard that you could have attached and purchased for this device, but no expandable memory, and the memory that's built in here is only 8 megabytes. Additionally, this device only featured a 20 megahertz Motorola Dragon Ball Z processor, which is ridiculous and pretty funny in today's standards, but back then it was basically the norm. It shows your rechargeable lithium-ion battery and how much capacity it's left on the top here. We have half. The good thing about this device was with the backlight turned all the way to low, battery is actually surprisingly lengthy. We could get around 2 weeks of full usage before we had to recharge the product, and that's with checking our appointments and calendars and using it actually every day. So the battery life is still pretty decent, and this old model in today's standards actually still holds a pretty decent charge. So you'll see that the battery life is nice. So let's just take a look at some other features on this device really quick. Standard features include on the top, you have a clock, and pressing that again allows you to beam information, which basically between different Palm devices, you have the ability to beam or to wirelessly send information from device to device. There's categories and also information, and you can sort your list by system, by games, or I like to use it by all. Now the most noticeable thing about this early PDA is how bubbly the screen is. Because it's the first color PDA, there's so many different layers underneath the screen that it becomes very hard to actually press down, and you'll see that best actually in the memo pad, notepad actually, when we're actually forced to draw stuff, and you can't. I don't know if you can hear this, but I'm pressing down pretty hard. You can't actually just expect it to do stuff. You'll have to actually press down super firmly through different layers of plastic and press down and really get this stylus in there for the device to recognize your touch. For example, I can say hello, and I have to say hello by pressing down really firmly and carefully. And after that, you'll be able to see that the device will recognize your touch, and then you can save it, which you don't really want to do because the memory will be full in about 5 seconds. Anyways, you have access to an address book, which you can store information, which was pretty interesting, but there's no cellular connection to this device at all, so you can basically only store stuff that you will see again using your phone. There's a calculator on here, which is pretty standard and typical. It's easy to use. The keys are actually surprisingly large for this early device, but again, you can't just press lightly and expect things to go. You have to actually press with your fingernail and really get in there and go through different layers of plastic just to get to the device. Otherwise, you have an expense calculator, which basically you can record the different expenses for trips. And if there's a pattern going on, it's that these are all features that are still relevant in Palm PDAs of today. They haven't really changed the UI up, which is probably one of the reasons why Palm has met its demise and has eventually, been bought by HP and now been dropped completely. But that's pretty much that. There's a memo pad for you to actually store information. Surprisingly, it actually works pretty decently. And you can actually, again, write that handwriting recognition by pressing A, B. Handwriting recognition using graffiti is slightly slower than typing, of course, but it's actually pretty accurate for the time that it was. You can also press an ABC key again and bring up that QWERTY keyboard. Again, you have to pick up keys on this tiny keyboard. So using the handwriting recognition again is very preferable. I'm going to show you my hand up to the buttons here, and you'll see how small it is. Anyways, that's that. We also have access to a hot sync key, which uses the modem feature that connects to your computer. And you also have a mail key, which again, there's no wireless built in, so it's basically just writing down basic mails, including to who, CC to who, and body and subject. And once we sync it to our computers, it'll automatically send using our computer. So again, it's basically just a place where you can process Word and documents. Additionally, there's a preferences, there's a security for logins, there's a to-do list, which allows you to write in things to do. I can write out this, and I can then check it off by using this little check-off bar. I can label it for different tasks and different things. This is still a pretty useful application in even today's standards. It's a nice digital to-do list application pad. There's also a welcome screen, which allows you to calibrate the screen again. I am going to do that because the screen is not being very sensitive. Let's tap that and tap this. And you'll see that the color, it just strikes me how dim the screen in general is and how non-vibrant the screen is. But overall, I guess it still works. The surprising thing is all the features and foundations are laid out for what Palm is going to be doing in the next century. So in that regard, it's actually pretty astonishing. So let's turn off the bright backlight all the way once again and see how bright it gets. I'm sorry, I'm doing this through the camera because in person I can actually not see the screen at all. But you'll see that with the brightness turned on, it gets marginally better. It's showing up a lot better on camera than it is in truth in person, I have to be honest with you. Because in extremities, right now in person, it's still very hard to read, difficult to read. I'm surprised that on camera it's actually looking like a decently bright screen with the screen brightness on maximum, which will drain the battery pretty fast. So overall, yeah, that's basically a retro look back at the Palm IIIC. You know, it's a pioneer. It's the first device with a color screen and the combination of a touchscreen technology, built-in a lithium-iron rechargeable battery, and using this newer UI that's been put in pocket PCs that are pretty popular in the world of today. So it's a pretty interesting look back and to see how much we've really reflected and grown throughout the years of science and technology. Thanks for watching this retro review of the Palm IIIC here at OSNVTXreviews.com.